Connection is the key. Connection changes the brain. At 5 minutes, we're seeing brains literally change the way they light up on brain scans. At 20 minutes, we're seeing huge changes in oxytocin levels in the brain, massive stuff. Connection is the key, and it sets you up for learning and engaging. So that's the first step. If you do nothing else from today, try out your 10 to 20 second connection anchor with your linchpin kids.
We often hear about regulation and we think ourselves are unregulated. So what do you wish teachers understood about how children truly learn to regulate?
Such a good question.
Rainbow Sky Creations acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we have recorded this podcast on, the Dharawal and Whadjuk Noongar people. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Rainbow Skies for Teachers. Today we have a friend of the pod on. His name is Dave, and we're going to be talking about some of those trickier behaviours or some of those students in our class that often have us puzzled or have us trying every tool in our toolbox. Every class seems to have at least one, and there never is a one-size-fits-all. Now, Dave has been on our podcast before, but we invited him back because there's so much more conversation to have with him. He's an OT, an all-round great guy, and he provides really clear, actionable solutions that are practical for teachers. And that's what we're all about here at Rainbow Sky Creations, practicality. Because behaviour management and classroom management and all of the things that go into that bag, it isn't easy. And sometimes we're given a lot of different strategies, a lot of different ideas from people who haven't been in the classroom for years or who haven't worked with kids in years. And some of these concepts, they just aren't practical. You're thinking, you hear them and you think that is great, but what about me? I'm on the front line in the classroom. And I think today's conversation is really going to help you if you are one of those teachers on the front line with students in your class that may have concerning behaviours. So whether you're an Aussie and you're just starting out the school year, or you are overseas and you're smack bang in the middle, you are going to get a lot from this episode. So without further ado, let us introduce to you Dave Jereb. Dave, teachers often hear kids described as oppositional, attention-seeking, too sensitive, all of these big words. From your perspective, what's really going on beneath those behaviours?
That is a solid question, and it's always more complex than you think it will be. I would say that successful participation is really what I'm looking for, right? And sometimes we get sucked into a compliance mode. You have to fit the mold. And if I can flip it to helping the child be successful, then we're really looking for a fit between their needs and their wants and their interests and the demands of the context, right? So there are demands within that environment, the sensory and physical environment and the activity that they're doing. When I go in to do a school visit, I chat to the teacher or their learning support, and I don't just watch the child. I'm saying, what does done look like in this activity? What's successful participation look like? So then I can see where there's a gap between what the child's doing and what's happening. It's not a one size fits all. It's about how does this child fit into this context? And so if we look at some of those things that you mentioned, there's a whole piece of this. And would you allow me to just sort of quickly run through the ABC that I teach in the course?
Please do. Yes,
I've sort of launched in straight into talking about the course, but it is, I can't talk about these things without thinking in a sort of robust way. So
yeah,
I start out with, it's not just a fix the child kind of model. Actually, it's about the child fitting into the context. So it's a person in their environment, in their occupation, OT say, but that's the activity, right? And so that's like a three-legged stool. And when you just focus on the child, it's like trying to sit on a stool that only has one leg. You're going to fall over. And actually, funnily enough, changing the environment or changing the activity are the quickest ways to get success. Now, if you can support the child to be more adaptable and dynamic, they can have a success across a wide range of activities and places and substitute teachers and all those things. So yeah, we want to help the child develop, but you're going to have quicker success with behavior if you can figure out how do I improve the fit for the child in front of me. So looking at some of those kids, oppositional was one that you mentioned. And so again, I want to look at the child and in themselves. And I just said I'm going to talk about the ABCIDEAS and never did. I talked about the PO. ABCIDEAS is looking at the behavior objectively. Looking at the antecedent is everything that led up to it. The consequences is everything that comes after it. So not how you're going to punish the kid, but what typically happens after it can make it more likely to happen again. And then the idea is individual differences of the child and their developmental abilities. That's the child component of it. And then we're looking at the environment. That's the sensory and physical environment, the activities, and the social relationships. And so if we can look at all those things, we can get a broad, holistic perspective of how that fit is working for the child or against the child. So we can come with hypotheses and then develop strategies. So if we're looking at a child that's oppositional, we want to understand more about that's sort of the what, but what's the why? Why are they oppositional? Yeah. Is it that they've got some language challenges and they're not actually understanding what you're saying? So they're just saying no or because they can't process it. Is it that they've got planning problems? So they can only plan, when kids are often controlling or rigid or oppositional, it's about doing it their way because they can set the plan and a plan that they understand versus trying to fit into someone else's plan. And then, everything really comes back for me, and I'm going to say this again and again today, I'm sure, because I'm obsessed with it. Everything's downstream from regulation and connection. And if a child is dysregulated, then their brain is not accessing the top part of their brain, which is their thinking and reasoning brain. They're more focused on these super highways with the amygdala, that fear brain. And that's your no brain, right? I sometimes go back in history to, I don't know if you've ever read How to Win Friends and Influence People. I think a lot of people are turned off by the title. But it's a 100-year-old book on sales. And he was selling vacuums door to door. And he learned very quickly that you don't say, do you want to buy a vacuum? People are like, no. But he said, hey, you have a beautiful house. They're like, oh, thank you. And he's like, oh, yeah, look, it must be a lot of work to maintain this house. Yes. And, I bet it would be great if it was an easier way to maintain your house and keep it clean. Yeah, that would be amazing. It's like, can I show you something that could make your life easier? Yeah. So he would get people saying yes, and there would be sort of this yes brain where it's an open brain and it starts with connection and it starts with yeses and it starts with positivity. But when we get a no brain, that is all closed and it's about safety and it's about getting safe and you're not processing. We don't want to get in a fight with our partner or our siblings, right? And everyone's talking and no one's listening because you're in that no brain. You're in that rigid, stuck brain. So I think they're in a rigid, stuck brain, those oppositional kids. So we're going to start with connection and want to get regulation so we get their lid on so that they can think and reason. And we want to help them figure out what's in it for them as well. And maybe come in like an on-ramp on a highway rather than hitting them at an intersection or forcing a decision coming in a little more smoothly. Some of the other ones, you mentioned attention seeking. I often like to flip that and say, if a kid's attention seeking, first thing is, if they're attention seeking, why? It's because they haven't got their cup full of attention. So to me, there's a little bit about that we're assuming that that's wrong. And it's hard for a teacher and it's hard for parents at a certain time, but is it wrong? And there are some people who have kids that never want to connect with others, that they wish they would be seeking their attention. So that's a little bit of a reframe. But another reframe, I would say, is I've heard people talk about it not as attention seeking, but connection seeking. And so they're seeking out that connection. And sometimes if you can fill that cup with just small doses of connection, you can meet that need. I don't know if you've ever seen, there's a very cool clip from the Family Guy. You can just get it on YouTube. If you just type in like Mum, Lois, it'll come up. And whatever I don't really watch it, but this clip is hilarious. And the baby's there going, Mom, Lois, Mom, Lois, Mom, Mom. And it goes on and on and on. And she goes, what? And he goes, hi. And he runs off. And so sometimes we just need to dose it. And so, just a little bit of connection can go a long way. And then the last one you talked about, did you say too sensitive or?
Yeah.
I mean, again, there's so many different reasons for all of these things.
Yeah.
But some kids, firstly, there are just different temperaments. So there's not a one size fits all. And people that are more sensitive are more sensitive. Like, that's okay. And that's not a wrong or right thing. It might be harder to deal with in a classroom. But I sometimes say with my therapists coming through, new grad therapists that are quite sensitive, I often say to them, it's a double-edged sword. So for those guys, I really watch out for them because they're really at risk of burnout and compassion fatigue and taking on too much if they don't have good boundaries. But they're also the ones that are going to be the most exceptional therapists if they can survive through that other piece. And so these kids, it is a double-edged sword. It can be a superpower that can make them, a beautiful health professional, a beautiful teacher. So I don't want to squash it. It's not toughen up, but I do want to help them become more resilient. And I think you do that through baby steps. There are probably some individual differences. There might be some challenges around regulation, even some challenges around how they process sensory information. Sensory and emotion go hand in hand. So again, a lot of these things I've talked about, their individual differences and where their development fits the task that we're doing, how we can set up the task to be a fit for them or have an environment that's not overwhelming for those kids. It is very hard to just give you a general thing on all of those. We want to look at the individual child within that context. And the cheat code is if we can match the context to where the child is at and then nudge them from there, that's where you're going to have the quickest success, which is easier said than done when you've got 25 to 30 kids in your classroom.
It is very difficult for teachers because they do have a mass amount of kids and everyone's got individual needs. Some are just louder than others. And they often will come into the classroom at the beginning of the day, having lived an entire day before that at home, getting ready for school and what have you. But kind of what I heard as the thread that went through everything that you just said, Dave, was that connection piece. And
Definitely
being able to connect with kids that perhaps have some of these labels in order to start out in a positive way. We spoke to Sharon Colan, who I know that you know Sharon too, back last year. So if you want to go and have a listen to her episode, we spoke about kids with ADHD with her, and she was talking about when the gates in their brain are open, which is kind of the yes brain, and then when they slowly close up, and when they're closed, which is the no brain, kind of what you were saying, it's really hard to get through. So it's that connection piece before those gates close up. So I'm just trying to think practically as a teacher, what are some things that you could do with kids as they arrive in the classroom in order to create that connection from the get-go?
Yeah. So one of the things that I go through in the Challenging the Story of Behaviour online training and the webinar I do sometimes as well is I talk about a 10-second connection anchor. And so a lot of people are like, I don't have all the time to be able to do all these things.
Yes, that's what teachers are thinking listening to this.
Yeah. So I'm going to tell you that 10 seconds, 10 to 20 seconds can make a massive difference. So I've put this into my rhythm with my own kids of a morning, and I used to feel embarrassed, but now I know that it's hard for everyone. My goal of a morning is to connect with my kids before they go in just the smallest little way. So when they say goodbye to me, when I'm leaving or they're leaving, I'm like, hey, bud, I hope you have a great day. Like, hey, Dad. I'm like, hey, psst, over here. Psst. And then they tune into me. I'm like, mate, I hope you have a great day today. And I see them gush, right? So this level of connection is a level of intimacy that would be like kind of weird if you did it to someone on the street. It would be highly weird if you did it to someone on the street, right? It is intimate, but it takes that level of intimacy to get some oxytocin washing over the brain, right? That's the love drug for mums and bubs. And when oxytocin washes over the brain, that oxytocin sends messages to the amygdala, our fear brain, that says, hey, you're not needed right now. I'm safe. I'm with someone who's got my back. And it also sends it to the HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which is your stress hormone pathway. So it's telling your fear brain and your stress pathway, chill out, dudes. We got this. I'm with someone who has my back. I love that I've got your back thing too. I think about, like way back in evolution, we're out in the jungle or whatever, and people sat in circles so that they had the person in front of them's back. You didn't have to worry about the tiger sneaking up on you. I'm looking behind me right now, like anyone in the podcast can actually see me do that. But but you don't have to worry about the tiger coming up behind you because you're with someone you trust who has your back. And I think our brains are still there where if we have this warm connection, we can relax our fear brain and our stress brain because someone's got my back. So for me, a teacher would, and I'm just going to call it, there are some linchpin kids that if you can help them be regulated and connected, the whole class wins. So if you've got 1 or 2 or 3 linchpin kids, I would be making an effort to when you get either as they're coming in or just before they come in or as they get down to their desk, you just crouch down in front of them, getting down on their level, maybe a little bit where your eyes are a little bit lower than theirs. So you've totally taken out the power of your situation that you would have if you were standing over them. You're down on their level and it's just like, hey, Jake, it's really good to see you. I think we're going to have a great day today. I'm wearing a black shirt today. So if you need anything or if you get a bit worried or something doesn't work out, just look for my black shirt and come find me or put your hand up or call my name or whatever's okay in that classroom. Just come and find me and I'll give you a hand. I love this on the playground too. So a lot of kids fall apart on the playground. I often talk about this poor teacher. I was so angry at her, but I've forgiven her now. But she was just lost and she didn't have the supports. And she, in this meeting, this IEP meeting, she said, I know every day he's going to go out on that playground and he's going to hit a kid. I'm like, well, if you know that, he doesn't need the behavior management plan. You do. You're the adult with the fully developed brain. Why don't we stop it? But she didn't have answers. So I wasn't supporting her. I wasn't understanding her why for that behavior of saying that thing. She didn't know what she could do. But you know what we did? There's always a teacher on duty with this bright fluoro vest. And so that kid, we said, hey, it's your job to deliver, I think it was I don't know if they have a whistle or it was something, had to deliver a note or a whistle to that teacher. That was his job at the start of lunch. And so he would deliver it to that teacher and the whole school was on board with this, right? Support the people who support the kids. And the teacher on duty knew that when he delivered that whistle, they would get down on his level and say, hey, Brian, Thanks for being so responsible and delivering me this whistle. This is super helpful. I really appreciate you bringing that over to me. Look, I'm wearing an orange vest. You can't miss me. If you need anything or if you have any problems with other kids, just come and find me and I'll help you figure it out, okay? What happens when you do that? You connect, so you get that oxytocin. You've got an ally, so you don't have to feel so fearful. You can feel grounded and safe. And then you've rehearsed a plan so that if you do start to dysregulate, you don't have to think too much. You've just got that plan at front of mind. And that teacher can watch where Brian goes to go play. Brian, that's such an 80s name. I don't know if we have kids called Brian these days. But they get to watch where the kid goes, and so they can monitor it. And if it starts to get rowdy, they can wander over and they can diffuse it before it gets bad. But they know exactly where the kid that has some challenges is. But it starts with connection, and it starts with that oxytocin washing over the brain and calming that fear response and stress response.
Yeah. And Brian's already said yes to that teacher in that get-go of that beginning conversation too. Exactly what you were saying at the beginning of our conversation today. I love your whole notion of supporting the adults who support the kids, which is why we've had you now twice on the podcast. Dave, not everyone has come on our podcast twice. But tell me, what does that exactly look like in a busy classroom, and why is supporting the adults that support the kids such a powerful place to start?
Yes, supporting people who support the kids, it takes a village to raise a child, right? And so, I'm an OT, and so people bring their kids to me, but we're not mechanics. We don't fix kids. We need to help them be successful at life. The goal is not to be good at OT, so I need to help families help their kids, and I need to help their educators know the little bit that I have. But we need to work together, right? I'm not the expert of the universe. The teacher is the expert in that classroom. If we can work together, that's super cool for that child. But who are you guys again? Teachers? Teachers have a really tough time now, right? Because we've realized it's great for integration, right? It's great for kids that have some challenges to be with kids that are doing well. And that's great in theory. The problem is we've got kids with more needs and we're not giving teachers more support to support those kids with more needs. So I think it's as hard a job than it's ever been in many ways. And so we do need to support the people who support the kids. So I think some of it is, I think this is where, in my clinic, when I have a therapist working with a family, I sometimes say they're not your kids, they're all of our kids. And I don't do that to take away power from them. I'm there to say, you don't have to make it up on your own. We're going to do it together. You're the lead therapist and we're here to support you. If things go wrong, that's as much on me as it is on you. And we're going to work together. And also you don't get to bullshit and make stuff up because you've got the support. So you can say to a parent, hey, great question. Let me chat to the team and get back to you. Let me chat to my supervisor and get back to you. Give me a couple of days to have a think through it and I'll get back to you. So in our clinic, that's the way we do it. Now, I have seen this in good schools too, right? Where a teacher doesn't have to feel like they're being watched and pressured by the curriculum, by the principal. If they have a supportive teacher that they can say, I need a hand with this. If we've got a kid that's having problems on the playground, that impacts all the kids. So we need to have a whole of school approach to supporting that child. And sometimes we need a whole of school approach to supporting the child that has trouble in the classroom, where they've got a relationship with a teacher from another classroom that they've just clicked, maybe in a previous year, or, and it just works out that we can support each other. And so there's a lot of support that needs to be happening right now as you're collecting your notes on what worked and what didn't work this year with your kids so that you can really empower next year's teacher to start on the front foot with them. But I do think it's that whole school approach. I think it starts from the principal down. They have to work within the system and the curriculum, and you can nudge that wherever you can. But the teacher needs to feel safe to let go of the curriculum when no one's learning anyway because we're all overtired and it's 35 degrees. Or the teacher needs to be able to fine tune to meet the needs of this individual child because that's the only way they're going to learn. But then you feel forced for the curriculum. So I do think that comes from principal down. And I do think that it is, if we can have whole communities of schools working together across classes, that's how it can work. Again, easier said than done. But I do think the more we talk about it and the more we see value and the more we find examples of where that's worked well, it's very powerful.
It is so powerful. I know my life as a teacher, you're almost a martyr to the job. It's always like, the kids are the most important part, and they are, but the adults that are caring for those kids, helping them learn, supporting them, your cup needs to be full. Like you need to put on your own life vest before you can help others, right? It's the same idea. So even that catchphrase of let's support the adults who support the kids. I would love to see, Dave, some people steal your catchphrase because I think it's just so powerful and start to use that in staff rooms and in meetings because it's reframing it into such a beautiful way. We need to help those adults so we can help the kids. Yes, it's about the kids, but the adults need the support too in order to best help the kids, right?
100%. Yeah. And again, not to plug again, but the book, Challenging the Story, A Surprisingly Simple Approach to Supporting Children with Challenging Behaviours, is the book I wrote a couple of years ago. It's about a teacher, Jenny. She's third year teaching a first grade class, and it's her hardest year yet. And she's got all these behaviours in the class. And so she ends up hooking up with a mentor who guides her through the process, and they come up with a strategy. She implements it, comes back, and they celebrate the successes and try the next thing. But it's an hour read. It's written as a story. You get these little highlights through it. I found some schools have really loved to read that as a book club, work together. There's one example where there is a kid having trouble. Basically, the playground example I gave you is several real life things, but that's in the book. And yeah, in an hour, you can get some of these concepts and teachers can talk together. Actually, there's a free workbook that you can download and do it as a book club as well. But yeah, I think it's good to be talking about these things.
Yeah, it's a fabulous read. You gave me a copy of the book when we first met a couple of years ago, Dave, and Alicia and I were staying in a hotel, and that night, we're early birds, Alicia and I, both of us. We love to get to bed early, and we both got into bed, and I picked up the book and I read it from cover to cover because it was told like a story, but at the same time, it was really relatable as a teacher. There was ideas in there that you could use as a teacher and go, oh, like I could pick that and that and that and give that a try. So we'll make sure that the book is linked in the show notes because it's a great read. And as you said, it is actually a really easy and really very interesting read too.
Thank you.
So let's switch gears only slightly and talk about regulation and self-regulation, which is something that we're hearing online so much at the moment. I think as teachers too, we often hear about regulation and we think ourselves are unregulated. So what do you wish teachers understood about how children truly learn to regulate?
Such a good question. It was a kind of a nice segue that you just talked about them about us feeling dysregulated, and a little bit earlier you talked about putting on your oxygen mask first kind of thing and asking for help. There's sort of two types of regulation. There's bottom-up regulation that's happening at the brainstem and things that we do with our body, sensory things. People might have heard these things by now, getting moving and using our muscles and using breath. Top-down regulation is when you're sort of like, oh, I need to pull this together. I need to think, and some of our poor kids are sitting in class going, pay attention, pay attention, pay attention, pay attention, pay attention. And they're not hearing anything that they're learning, and they're just focusing on sitting still and not getting into trouble. And that's not actually helpful. So these two things come together, but if you're not regulated, you can't. It's hard to do that. It's just very labor intensive to do that thinking regulation, that top-down regulation. And that really relies on executive functions. So to self-regulate, you need that fully developed brain, or at least it's on the pathway. And it is about 7 before we're expecting kids to do that with some level of independence. But our kids who are neurodivergent, or our kids who have some regulation challenges, it can be much, much longer. And I'm just going to tell you that part of the brain, the front part of the brain that deals with executive functions, that's not fully developed till 25 to 30. And sorry for my guys out there, it's 30 for us and 25 for the women. But yeah, so it's not, so just having the care to know, all right, they're struggling, but that part of the brain is still many, many years off being fully developed. I was talking this in my kids' teachers. I did it in service for them. And there were a couple of teachers that hadn't quite got there. So they got made fun of a little bit because they didn't yet have the developed brain. But so what I want to tell you is we talk about self-regulation, but co-regulation comes before self-regulation. So we get that with a baby, right? A baby needs us to co-regulate. But sometimes I say to people, you know what? I think self-regulation doesn't exist. Like, it's a myth. It's like we're always co-regulating or co-dysregulating when we're with other people. So not being too focused on self-regulation and seeing if we can just focus on regulation. So how can we support regulation? And then getting back to what you said about oxygen mask, co-regulation comes before self-regulation. But before you can co-regulate, you need to be regulated yourself.
Yeah.
So self-regulation for you comes before co-regulation. And so taking care of your needs is important. And I do think that if there are CDs, like there's one called Sacred Earth Drums. It's a real therapy CD that has a strong rhythm and it's really regulating for kids. And I never use it because it completely dysregulates my nervous system. So sometimes it's good to think about your own needs. We have to remind mums to do that all the time. Mums are not doing that a lot, and teachers probably aren't as well. And then a lot of teachers are mums as well, so it's a double banger.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yes, asking for help, getting support, and choosing things that help you keep regulated, I think is a really important part. And then you're finding those ways to talk about and to support kids' regulation so that they can be awake and alert, but calm and grounded and attentive to be able to tune into what they need to. And it is multifactored. There are sensory elements where I sometimes say to teachers, if you look around and no one's learning, just stop. Just stop. Take a break. Go outside in the fresh air. If you're going to teach this for half an hour and no one's going to learn for the whole half an hour, go outside for a run for 20 minutes and come back and learn for 10 minutes in a way that the brain's awake and alert. So sometimes just recognizing this is not working, I need to do something different. And maybe it's just a 5-minute movement break or a bit of Taylor Swift on the old smart board. I know that I'm talking to a Taylor Swift fan, right?
You are.
I've seen your Instagram profile. But get kids moving. Get kids breathing, so long, deep breaths are really organizing, and heavy work using the muscles. Maybe it's just, all right, everyone get up. We're going to do 10 desk push-ups. We're going to do 10 chair lifts. What's something that we can do just to get the body moving and a bit active? Because, really attention, what do they say, 1 to 2 minutes per year of life or something like that. Like adults top out at like 20 minutes. And so just being aware of what we're expecting of kids, and if it's not working, take a break and refill that cup, and maybe even think about what can I do to set kids up for success. So rather than waiting till it's not working, think about it's never working at this time of the class. So instead of doing 30 minutes, I'll do a 5-minute brain wake up and then I'll do some of it after it. Is that helpful?
That's really helpful. As you were talking, I was thinking about something that I used to do in my kindergarten class many years ago. I actually do it at home with my own children too. And I realized it's a regulation strategy for myself. I put on just piano covers, so no actual lyrics, and just have that music on in the background. And I always found my kindergarten class was always so calm. We'd always do it during writing time, which is the hour before we went out for recess. And I do it for my own kids now too. And it just like brings it down. But it's maybe not bringing them down, it's bringing me down, which then in turn helps bring them back as well.
Yeah, and that's okay. That's great.
Yeah, as you were talking, I'm like, oh, that's interesting when you just notice those things about yourself. Okay, so your work, Dave, emphasizes that simple approaches can often create the change that sticks, and we're talking about those simple approaches today. Can you share a couple of practical strategies that teachers who are listening to our conversation today might be able to go into their classroom today and use straight away?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about some, haven't we? So I would say connection is the key, right? If you can get that connected brain with oxytocin washing over it, calming that nervous system. So that 10-second connection anchor where you make connection, help them rehearse a plan if things go wrong, and give them an ally. That would be my number one. If you do nothing else, take that one away. I do think that some sensory supports, so things like a little movement break or a little using your muscles. So a bit of movement, organizing with rhythm. Sometimes we go, we tried that movement, but that made them more dysregulated because it was just chaotic. You don't want irregular. You want something with a bit of rhythm. So it could be dancing to something with a beat. Bit of heavy work, like we talked about with the desk push-ups or the chair lifts or wall push-ups, try to push the wall over, and breath, I think, is the other one. So if you can find ways to incorporate breath, and it could be songs, just think about songs with big vowel sounds. I don't know if you know, did you know my sister was an OT and a musician?
Yes, I actually did.
Yeah,
you've told me before.
She has some albums out there. One is called Say Good Day, and I don't know what the others are called, sorry. I can't remember off the top of my head, but so she has ones that accentuate the vowel sound. So they have these long vowels. You can get those ones on Spotify. And so it's just one called Alligator. And it'll be like, alligator, right? And sorry for my poor singing voice. She's the singer in our family. But that extending the vowel sound gets a long, deep breath that taps into the diaphragm. And you don't have to get her music. You can if you want. And it's on Spotify, but there's other music out there. But if you just think about things with a rhythm of about 1 beat per second, things that you can sing that have a long vowel sound so you get long, deep breaths. I love those kind of things that you can just incorporate. And the last thing I would say would be make it meaningful. So I know that's really hard when you've got 20 or 30 different ideas in the class. But again, if you just think about your linchpin kids, or if you're thinking about times that you can do this, if it's a Spider-Man activity, if it's a Pokemon activity, if it's a 6-7 activity, if it's a, like whatever it is, you're going to engage the kids more. If there's a level of meaning, they're going to lean in, they're going to be more motivated, they're going to work harder. And you know what? The learning sticks when it's playful or when it's meaningful, and particularly when they go together. So if you can find ways of tapping into what they're interested in, you're going to hook their attention and you're going to see them perform and retain the information better.
They're great tips because they're things that we can do straight away in our classrooms. I'm going to get the links for your sister's songs and put
Okay.
them in the show notes in case people want to use them in their classroom, because we spoke to Ricky from Amplify Music about a year or two ago now, and he was talking about the exact same thing of how singing and music and rhythm can really help with that regulation. And it's simple, but it's also something that you and the kids can enjoy. I mean, we were just talking about music a minute ago. So what a great little way to be able to integrate it into your classroom.
Yeah, and you know what? Like, I haven't done this. So normally when I start talking about my best friend, Chad Japiti. He helps me out with a lot of things. But if you get on ChatGPT and just go, I want some current contemporary pop music where they extend the exhale. Or you could say, like, I heard Dave Jereb talk about how extending the vowel sounds can get longer, deeper breaths that activate the diaphragm. Make me a playlist of songs that my kids will like that do this, so that I can get them taking long, deep breaths, tapping into their diaphragm to support attention. It'll give you an awesome playlist that you'll probably love.
Yeah. I mean, as you were suggesting lessons that are meaningful, I was thinking you could go to ChatGPT and say, I'm teaching fractions today. We're learning about halves, quarters, and eighths. My kids love Pokemon. Can you please give me a lesson idea that integrates Pokemon with this concept? I know there's lots of people that feel lots of different ways about AI, but they are really awesome ways to use it to help you as a teacher, because you don't have to do it all alone.
No, it's pretty amazing. It's your personal assistant and it's not going anywhere.
So use it to your advantage.
Although my sister's a teacher, I've got the inside scoop on you lot. She's a primary school teacher and she's on these Facebook pages. They're all saying, how do we stop kids using AI and how do we better use AI to create our lesson plan? So I've got the inside scoop.
Yeah.
You
want your cake and eat it too. I've got lots of thoughts about that, but we will save that for another podcast episode.
Sounds good.
Now, Dave, on your website, as I was scrolling through it, searching for different things that I wanted to ask you about, I saw a little course that you've got that outlined the 3 steps to transforming challenging behaviours. I want to know what these 3 steps are.
Yeah, so that's a webinar I do from time to time. It's a free webinar I do, but I do think it's super powerful. And in that webinar, I teach something I call the connected caregiver model. So my thoughts are being a connected caregiver is the key to supporting your child and their challenging behaviours without damaging your relationship and actually strengthening it. And so the 3 steps relate to the connected caregiver model. The first thing we've talked about lots and lots and lots today, connection is the key. Connection changes the brain. In the full course, I talk about the 10-second connection anchor. At 5 minutes, we're seeing brains literally change the way they light up on brain scans. At 20 minutes, we're seeing huge changes in oxytocin levels in the brain, massive stuff. Connection is the key, and it sets you up for learning and engaging. So that's the first step. If you do nothing else from today, try out your 10 to 20 second connection anchor with your linchpin kids. The second thing is child-focused strategies support those changes that stick. So in the connected care, I didn't actually talk about what the connected caregiver model is. Basically, I've got these four quadrants. Of course, it's 4 quadrants. It would be weird if it was any other number of quadrants. But I've got these quadrants, and the 2 axes are from child-focused from adult focused to child focused, and from systematic to haphazard at the bottom. And so my dad, I love him, but he was in this top left box, and that is adult focused and structured and systematic. And that's a compliance mode. And that is what, Mr. Berryman, my 8th grade science teacher, was. And this compliance focus is about getting my needs met as an adult, getting you to comply. But it's very clear, you know where you stand. It doesn't help the child get an internal compass of how to respond. It's quite reactive and it's out of fear more than anything else. So it doesn't really help them learn and figure stuff out, in my opinion. The complete diagonal opposite down the bottom right-hand corner is this child-focused approach that's a bit haphazard. And I call that a comfort approach. And it looks nice at first. And the child sort of runs the show and rules the roost. Maybe they're bubble wrap kids or cotton wool kids or whatever it is. Sometimes they're holding the family or the classroom hostage because they're in charge.
Mm-hmm.
And it might seem nice to allow the child to be completely in charge, but it's not actually always, it doesn't help the child feel safe. They need us to be their rhythm. They need to know their mile markers. They need some structure, right? This haphazard approach is not helpful, and they need us to be their guide for them too. So while it's nice that it's child focused, it's not consistent and we're not modeling that for them. So it also doesn't help them get that internal compass. It's even though it's the opposite of the compliance approach. The bottom left-hand corner is this chaos approach, and that's where it's all adult focused and no structure. This is the worst of all worlds, where it's all about getting my needs met, but then I'm inconsistent, and so the child doesn't know how I'm going to respond. That's actually quite damaging in terms of attachment relationships as well. What we want is the top right box, which I know is really hard on a podcast to visualize, but that's where it's child focused in terms of how do we help the child be successful in this activity? And we have a system to work through so that we can be consistent, we can understand, we can move from the what of behavior to the why of behavior. And whether that system's just something simple, like I talked about, person, environment, occupation, right? Person, environment, and the activity that we're doing. All right, what are the things about the child that aren't a match for what I'm asking them to do, or the place that I'm asking them to do it? Or, I teach the ABCIDEAS, which breaks that down even further so that you can really nail down on how can we support them to have an activity that's at the just right challenge and meaningful to them. How do we make sure that the environment isn't overwhelming to their senses because of their individual differences? And I know it sounds like a lot, but if you can have a system, the system does the heavy lifting for you and you can just work through that process. So, that's really the third part. So I've talked about two parts there. So you talked about the 3 steps of connection is the key, child-focused strategies, support changes that stick, and that you got to have a system because that helps you have that, be able to be proactive in how you support them, and they come together in the connected caregiver model. But it's having a good system to think through, making sure it's about successful participation for the child, and everything's downstream from connection and regulation.
So would I be right in saying that your course, where you introduce this ABC ideas, really helps with that system piece for teachers?
Yeah, I would say 100% it does. And I made a bonus that comes with the course that I think is actually, it's worth more than the entire course. The course is great. The course is 4 hours of content. It's 8 modules, 20 to 40 minutes. I go through each of those elements so you understand how to think more broadly about the child. But the quick action guide is under 20 minutes of videos where I just walk you through filling out the worksheet. And so if you have a behavior that's doing your head in, I call them challenging behaviors. Some people say, well, I don't use challenging behaviors. I say behaviors of concern. I'm like, I don't know. These behaviors are challenging they sure feel challenging to me.
Yeah, they are a challenge.
They're causing challenges for the child too. I'm not focused on the child when I'm saying that. It's all our responsibility. But so you've got this challenging behavior. If you have a challenging behavior, you can go to this quick action guide today. And video 1 in 1 to 2 minutes is going to tell you how to fill out the B. How do we make sure that that's objective, not subjective, but it's just what's happening, pure and scientific. Then we're going to look at the A. And then for a minute, I'm sort of coaching you in this video for 1 to 2 minutes of look at what happened in the seconds before, in the hour before, the morning before, the night before. Is there a trauma history? You don't necessarily know everything, but it's just doing your best you can to fill it out. Then we go to C, then we go to I, D, E, A, S. And by the end of it, then there's like a 4 or 5 minute video where we develop strategies. And there's sort of 3 parts to those strategies. We look at how do we change the environment or activity? How do we build skill in the child or others? So the caring adults, but maybe also the other students. And then how do we support that child's development? And so supporting the child to develop is there, but that's the slowest route to changing that behavior. Just remember, the quickest route to changing the behavior is setting up the environment and the activity to be a better fit for that child's needs and to nudge them from there.
Fabulous. So we'll link to your course in the show notes if anyone's thinking, oh, this is something that I need. I'm even thinking back to different years, particular classes that I've had. And sometimes it's a couple of kids. Sometimes it's just one child that you're like, oh, I just got to get my head around this, or what could work best for this child that I've tried a whole heap of different things. It's not working. Or this is live in February, this podcast, if you're listening in real time. So you may have got a brand new class if you're in Australia and you're thinking, okay, I've got a child here. I've been given this background. Let's get started on the right foot.
I agree. Totally do my course. It's awesome.
Okay, so Dave, you have given us so much amazing information, a lot to think about, a lot to reshift our ideas. And we do one thing on our podcast. We've been doing it for a year now, where we ask you a question that another guest has left. So I'm going to ask for your question off air, but this question is actually kind of along the same lines as what we've been talking about, but really related to the school experience. So if you could redesign any part of the school experience, what would you change?
All right, I'm going to cheat a little bit and have 2 answers. One's my OT brain, where I just bring back more recess and lunch, and we just have longer recess and lunch and more play. That would be the short answer. Hang
on, I want to ask a follow-up question.
Yep.
longer periods of recess and lunch, or like add in another break time throughout the
Well, I don't know
day?
about you, but I had two recesses and a lunch. I had morning tea, little lunch,
Mm.
and lunch, and then afternoon tea. So I had three when I grew up.
Okay, I didn't. I only had two.
Yeah, I'm getting a bit old. But but yeah, I certainly yeah, I think I would go back to I know people do crunch and sit, but I would like kids to get more movement and more
Mm.
play in their day. And it does
Okay.
sort of lead into my second thing. Is that
Yep, I'm good with
all
that.
good?
I was just interested to know whether you thought we add in
Well, I
another
just
break or whether to make them longer. Because sometimes as a teacher, like with my teacher hat on, I'm thinking, oh, longer breaks can often lead to like a little bit more trouble the longer the break
yeah.
on the
Although I just
playground.
heard China, I think, has 2 hours of lunch or something interesting. I don't know. Anyway, but I do want more. I'd like more free time for kids so
Mm.
that they can be kids, is my personal thing. But then I think my answer for the modern age is my dad brain meets my OT brain and thinking about my kids and all these things is I'm really nervous about what our kids are going to, my kids are going to be finishing school in 8 years and 11 years. And I'm thinking, what on earth are they going to need in this AI world of the future? And I'm not sure any of us have really figured it out. And we're trying to figure out how do we stop them cheating with AI? And I think it's the wrong question. It's like, how do we utilize what we've got and what do they need? And I guess I have a couple of ideas and they come down to being more practical and being more creative. And so I think needing to memorize things or to know stuff is not super useful because our friend ChatGPT can do a lot of that thinking for us. I think there's two types of professionals that are still going to be around in the future, and one of them are hands-on. So I would be bringing back lots more, and I know you're more primary than high school, but I'm thinking sort of high school. I'd be bringing back more woodwork and design and technology and cooking and things related to trades. And I'd be helping kids figure out how to, I don't know, do people fix cars? Those are things. And then I think hopefully health professionals will still be around and doing some of those sort of things. But thinking about more practical, how do we use our body to do things in ways that robots can't do? And computers can't do. And then creative, I think we're going to need to be adaptable. Things are going to be happening rapidly. So to be able to adapt and to think laterally. So I want to help my kids be creators, not just consumers.
Mm.
And so how do we do that? How do we help them develop things? We're working on an AI coloring book in our house that we've sort of created with ChatGPT that's animals in vehicles. And hopefully this holidays we'll get it onto Amazon Kindle Direct Printing where Amazon will do it and maybe we make $1 a month. Who knows? But it's like that's our version of a lemonade stall. And then the
Yeah.
kids actually made me a QR code for the course out of Lego. And it's really cool. And you can scan this Lego QR code. Now I've given everyone their idea. The kids are going to kill me. And so it's like, so I'm going to see if they can do a business around creating Lego QR codes and we'll go around town and see if we can sell it to the local real estate. But how do we help them create, not just consume social media and rubbish? And that's for me. I think we need to be more hands-on again and more creative.
Yeah, I love that. As you know, we're very big on hands-on resources here at Rainbow Sky Creations and just going back to those roots of just getting in and working on something, coming up with the ideas. And yeah, great answer.
Thank you. I made it myself.
So fabulous. Before we go, Dave, you need to tell our listeners where they can connect with you if they want to hear or know more.
Yeah, so moveabout.com.au/courses is where you can find the information. That's our OT clinic page, but the courses page has any of the webinars and my online course. There's a direct link to the course that I might give you to put in the show notes.
I'll pop that in the show note.
And probably the easiest is just finding me on Instagram, which is Dave Jereb _OT.
Fabulous. And I will put that link in the show notes as well. Dave, it has been an absolute pleasure. Second time on the pod. I think a second may have even been better than the first.
Oh, well, that's very kind. Tell me, how did we do the first time? Are we, in the top 50%?
Your episode, actually, I was looking this up before we hit record. Your episode is in the top 10 of all time listens. So actually what I will also do is link your original episode because it was a long time ago. Let me have a look. It was episode 19 and we're in the hundreds now. So I will link your first episode in the show notes too.
I was totally fishing for that, but that was great. So much fun.
Amazing. Thank you as always. Dave is such a wealth of knowledge, and throughout that entire interview, I just found myself nodding along saying, yes. I found myself thinking about different times in my own career where I reflected back and I thought, oh yeah, I did that without even knowing, or thinking I could have done that better with this knowledge. And that's one of the things that we love to do on this podcast, is to share the stage with experts that can really help us thrive as teachers, because the more we know, the better we can be. And as I said at the very, very beginning of this episode, there is no one size fits all. So conversations like this can really help build up that toolbox that we have as teachers that we are always pulling on, just to get the best out of our students, to make sure that they have the best possible learning environment and that everyone around them also has that too. I think that's one of the things as teachers, is that there might be a particular child that is causing some sort of issue in your classroom. But as a teacher, you want to care for that child, you want to give them the best experience possible, but at the same time, you're being torn from all the other children and you want to make sure that they too are getting the best experience. So putting some of these strategies and some of these things that Dave taught us today into practice is really going to help everyone in the classroom, to help that student thrive, that particular student, but to help the whole class thrive. And as Dave says, what he does is he's helping the adults that support the kids, and supporting those adults is so, so important. So if you don't take anything away from today, take that catchphrase. Let's support the adults that support the kids. Thank you so much for choosing our podcast. We are forever grateful for every single listen, for every single download. If you loved today's episode, we would love it if you could give us a review. We're trying something fun and different and asking teachers to give us a review as if it were a school report. Not a long general comment, maybe just a sentence or two that we can have a little laugh at. And if we get some good ones, we will share them on the pod. Thank you so much, and we will be right back here next week. Bye.
Thanks for choosing to listen to Rainbow Skies for Teachers, the go-to show dedicated to teachers who want to make a big difference in education.
If you enjoyed the episode, please leave us a 5-star review or share the episode with a friend, because together we're
unstoppable.